All right, it is your friendly neighborhood surveyor. We're going to talk about, I guess, like the different phases of the job, and I'm approaching it through construction staking. So that's primarily what we do, everything from the boundary to the final monuments. And I think if you're going to be in this field, you need to learn, if you're going to be in the field and you're going to do this type of work, in one way or another. It may not be houses, maybe it's high rises, maybe it's commercial buildings. But if you're going from boundary and all everything to out in the field to some kind of construction staking, you need to know the math behind it, and you need to know the reasons why you're doing each thing and what your limits are in regards to like staking. You know, not everything has to be staked to the exact hundredth, and we'll talk about that right here. So I like to call this like the design phase in the beginning. So you have your boundary, and that's where you close your traverse if you're turning angles, or you're turning in your work, but you're checking your work with inversing and everything if you're using GPS. But you need to know what a boundary is, and just Google the definition of a survey boundary, and that'll give you the nuts and bolts of it. And this doesn't change state by state. Maybe rules, regulations, or the way people do it changes, but you still gotta close a shape, improve your work. Surveying is a lot of proving your work, because if you don't, they're gonna call you wrong and you don't have anything to back you up. So this seems to be like the order that we normally go in. Boundary, and then if there's an ALTA that needs to be done, again, Google definition of a survey. ALTA stands for American Land Title Association, and it'll give you the different scope of requirements for the ALTA. Mess that up. And so every time you go and do one, then you kind of see the scope, because back in the day, we didn't have to worry about elevations. Not that they weren't requested, but they mostly were not requested. Now, elevations are all part of the ALTA. And the boundary, you got to tie in a benchmark, so not only is it horizontal, but vertical as well. Then if the job's big enough or if it's required, then there's an aerial. And all of this, well, the boundary, aerial, and boundary and aerial starts your control setup or your perimeter control. So the aerial, like we did an aerial for an ALTA, and then also the request was an aerial for contours and everything on that vacant piece of land out in Palm Desert. So boundary, ALTA, aerial. Then you may need he may be requested to start doing cross sections on the street. So if the property is tying into existing streets, they want to know where the curb is and to verify, location and elevations and grades and all that good stuff, utilities. So cross sections. And then any miscellaneous topo. Again, if they're tying into or they're expanding a project and they need to know what the ground looks like or what utilities are around or hardscape, then that may just be some added topo work. And then sewer manhole dips. So if you're doing cross sections and job is tying into utilities, and we also do storm drain manholes as well, and catch basins, we dip those manholes as well. And that is part of the design phase, because all this information will go to the engineer. Well, the surveyor does the boundary part, and this stuff goes to the engineer, and that's what they design the job off of, our information right there. So we call it the design phase. Well, that's what we've been referring to it as in the office. And then let's say if it's going to be a bunch of homes, then the construction phase, I would say, starts with control. So what we normally do now is we set perimeter control and a couple points inside the job site for the graders. and they do the rough grade themselves with GPS. We may do some rough grade, but I can't tell you the last time I actually rough graded a whole job. Maybe in the early 90s, 2000s or something. But we set control. Rough grade is performed either by us or by the graders. And then we normally have to certify, normally certify lots, maybe the street, and the pads. Well, lots is the same thing as pads, and blue tops. No one really grades the pad off of blue tops here anymore. They use it kind of like a visual certification. The only time they ever grade pads with blue tops, at least now, is if the the pads were used as like a spoil pile storage or something, and they need to just grade it back, or it's just been a long time, maybe rain damaged the pads, so we set them blue tops. By the time this is all done and certified, then they're released to do the utilities, and we go with the deepest underground utilities first, and it's normally sewer, storm drain. That goes with catch basins, everything as well. Water, we do stake water out here. It's just because it's kind of like liability, and also like right here, dry utilities. That'd be, electric and stuff like that. We do crossings. We show where the like electrical lines for pole boxes cross the street, and it's because when they would, if we had them, let me go back. If they put in curb before water, it used to be where they can pull off of curb, use the top of curb as a grade, and then the curb face as alignment, or back of curb, depending on where you're from, as alignment, and they would put in water and utilities, like pole boxes and stuff like that, handholds, on their own. Over the last decade or so, those trenches have not been compacted well, so our streets fail and our curb breaks. And now we do water before curb, and we do dry utility crossings before curb. Then we do curb. So the job was just out in Lancaster. We didn't do any of the rough grading, but we set control. We got to do pad certs tomorrow with some blue tops. We're currently, they're just finishing up the sewer, storm drain. Got to restake some catch basins. And we're doing the crossings today and tomorrow. And water will be next, and then we're going to start staking some curb. After all that's done, then we normally do house corners, any perimeter walls or side walls, stuff like that, retaining walls, and then final monuments. Now, there's a lot of things that can happen in this time. Maybe they need sidewalks staked. We have a lot of ADA rules, and so this is kind of I know I'm missing a few things probably here, but in between all this, there could be several requests. But if you're going to be in this field, you're going to work in the field, start learning what a boundary is, and start learning the math, or at least the terminology. Know how a boundary works. Know how to inverse on your data collector, inverse, traverse, and stuff like that. Set up a dummy file in your data collector so you can mess around and do things without it affecting a job. I would print out the definition of this, print out the definition of the ALTA, and just keep it in a binder, and just keep yourself some notes. Terminology is important, and how these things work. Cross sections, know that these are for the engineer so that they know what they're tying into. Topo, again, if there's like a addition being put on, they need to know what's around. So if something needs to be moved, or dirt needs to be added or taken away, it's just a miscellaneous topo for whatever design needs to happen. This is kind of self-explanatory. You get a dip, usually shoot the top of the manhole, so you have an elevation and a horizontal location. You get a dip, so you have a invert grade or elevation, and then you can tell the rate of grade. Catch base. I know not everyone dips catch basins. And then start just building good habits, set good control points, things that aren't going to move. Set them below grade if you can. So if somebody scrapes it or something, you don't lose it. Know the reason why we do a lot of this stuff, especially like certifications. A lot of times, job sites they can't move to the next step until they get their certification letter for inspectors and all that stuff. Utilities, you underground utilities, you have more leeway. We stake out. I mean, we stake out everything. We don't set up on something and just pull a chain and scratch and give line. So even though a lot of this stuff could be plus or minus a tenth horizontally, we probably stake it out within a few hundredths. But grade is more important in my opinion than horizontal. If you're talking just a couple hundredths, grade is how that flow is going to work. And if you're not staking water right now, I would say maybe you're going to later. And same with the utility crossings. Curb, doesn't matter if it's curb face or back of curb. Curb is curb. And you're getting a phone call. And walls, if it's perimeter, we normally stake PL. So we don't keep all the standards on all the walls. And then but just know why these things are staked and know the different steps or understand why these things go in sequence. And let me know if you have any questions. Survey out.